frustrating. If you're a Manchester United fan, you have to feel like everything's against you. VAR is against you. The world is against you. Everybody else is against you.
But they're not the only team that's dealing with that. Let's be honest. We're having these conversations with other teams that are on the receiving end of some poor VAR decisions or questionable VAR decisions, ones that affect your team and are still going out and not falling apart, like Man U, who lost the lead twice in this game. We just saw the late equalizer and then the game-winning goal by Copenhagen. And it's not to say that Man United weren't up against it, but I mean, you got to have a bit more of an inspired performance now.
I think the difficulties of this season are what caused this team to not be able to sort of galvanize in these tough moments.
Like, confidence has to build.
Yeah, it's the feeling that, like, oh, it's happening again.
Yeah.
You know, and that has to be bleeding out onto this team. And you watch it, and there's also something to be said about Erik Ten Hag's posture on the sideline that just doesn't give me confidence.
Every time the camera cut to him,
United fan.
just
there's
no emotion, really.
What's the term? Browbeaten? There's a term for how he looks. And I know that he has a different personality than what we're used to in England. I know he's like a very direct guy. He just says, kind of somewhat robotic sometimes in the way he speaks. He just kind of gives you just the facts. But I mean, the guys on the sideline, he looks defeated. He looks like they've lost the moment something bad happens to them.
But you also don't want a coach who's erratic on the sideline when things are bad.
Correct.
You look at Erik Ten Hag and you say, he doesn't get too high and he doesn't get too low. I'm okay with that as a manager. I don't care about the posture. It's more about the player selections and the tactics and how do you adjust when you have the lead being down a man.
Started yesterday when Varane was available.
Why?
How? I don't know.
It's been said by the B writers who follow Manchester United, said that, and I don't know if this came from a press conference or something they asked, or maybe they've just assessed it, that he prefers Johnny Evans to Varane, which is confusing just based on both of their careers and what we've seen Varane do. It's a bit confusing to suggest that Johnny Evans somehow fits his team. I know he got an assist in the last match, if not the previous match, but what exactly does he provide that Varane doesn't?
So how hot is Erik Ten Hag's seat getting? Because now it's not just the results, but you're mentioning questionable personnel decisions as well.
It'll be gauged if they do or don't make the Champions League knockout stage.
I disagree. I think it comes
regardless, his seat is hot as it can be right now.
I think you have a justified reason. If they don't make the next round of the knockout stage in this group, you have a very justified reason to sack him.
I don't think he gets sacked unless it's elongated, until the Ratcliffe situation is resolved. Because you're going to want, if what the rumors are true is that he will be making all footballing decisions, you almost don't want to take that decision out of his hands.
And where do you go from that? If you sack Ten Hag now, who takes over?
Well, that's a question for any time that you fire.
No, because you have managers available. There's rumors floating around. Oh, this person would be interested in taking Man United, taking over that position, and there would be a benefit to taking him.
Who are those rumors? Do we know? Because I can't imagine who would be able to come in that's of that ilk.
Like a good caretaker versus a long-term manager, right?
No,
there's a difference.
Yeah, a caretaker you can get anyone. I mean, but who would be able to?
Not really.
No one.
No, but you could get a legend. You could get someone of an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's, ilk that could come in and just to, I don't know, honestly, Rio Ferdinand, someone who can just settle the team. You know what I mean? Roy Keane, someone who can just settle the club, who's a legend who at least the locker room would respect for the rest of the season.
For example, is a club legend that is available as a manager. But no one goes into a job, especially right now at Manchester United, saying, all right, like they're securing a long-term deal. Not even Alex Ferguson, when he took charge of Manchester United.
Yeah, he got five relatively mediocre years before they
became what they became. I think it's difficult in modern football to come in and say,
but I'm saying
this is a long-term plan. You at least have 5 years to figure it out. At Manchester United, given how dire the situation, they need to figure it out quickly. That's why until Ratcliffe shows up, decisions won't be made. But maybe by January, he will be there when Manchester United are or are not in the knockout stage of the Champions League. Yesterday's game, you can tell when a big decision doesn't go their way, like a red card. And we can get into the red card if you want. But that dictated the tone of Manchester United because they were playing really well. Højlund was firing on all cylinders. And this red card, listen, It's a high tackle. I understand why.
It looks bad. Visually, that's bad.
I understand why a referee goes over to the monitor, sees it, and has to give a red card. It's like his arm is twisted. Football isn't played in slow motion. It isn't played in freeze frame. Football's played in real time, and there are certain intentions. And when I see referees say a certain thing, and I see the large majority of football community, I'm not talking about fans, I'm talking about managers and players that have played this at this elite level, outspoken, outraged that shouldn't be a red card, it's very telling. Rashford had no intent. He gets him on the ankle.
I know, but intent has nothing to do with it.
All right.
Even so, though, just use common sense. This is my thing. If a referee can see the play, ARs can see the play. It's not missed. For me, VAR should only be implemented if the referee didn't have the right angle. They didn't see it.
If you go back and review a lot of actions that happen in a match, you could probably make a ruling.
Right.
Exactly.
But for me, the referee sees it. He's not missing anything. He sees what's going down. This is
I don't want to
unfortunate.
see this play. I want to see it in real time.
This type of play should not be a red card. This is not a red card. And there's not force. He's going to protect the ball. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to shield it. This isn't a forceful tackle where a red card is warranted.
Now,
if you gave a yellow, I'm okay with that.
The ankle was a side effect of the intended action, which was, as you mentioned, to shield the ball. But of course, as we know, intent is not.
Anytime a player's ankle, the side of his ankle gets cleats, and stomped, I think it's fair that we take a second to say, hey, let's look at it. But I think if, what Nico's saying is true. If you watch this in real time, and we all saw it as it was happening, none of us said like, oh, he meant to do that. So it's unfair to give a player a red card for the situation. But also, I feel like maybe the scrutiny we've been placing on these refs have caused this sort of maybe trigger happy, or maybe the pressure is mounted on these refs to make these calls when it's not even necessary. This call wasn't necessary to be made. And Manchester United somehow got screwed because of this situation.
It's backwards from trigger happy. They don't want to blow the whistle. They want to let VAR dictate the game. They want VAR to make the tough decisions. In the penalty box, refs aren't blowing the whistle because they know that as a backup, they have VAR. So ultimately, when refs aren't taking decisions, when the prowess of referees are seen inside of the box and on these decisions, they're kind of taking a step back and using VAR as a safety net. It's a dangerous game because like in England, and now slowly in Europe, VAR is reffing these games and not the refs themselves. So again, I feel like this week we've had a very strong and controversial, emotional week with technology in football. It's an indication to IFAB to get together again, have a conversation on how the rhythm and the flow and the overall look of the game that we've grown to love is changing before our eyes. And just like I said yesterday, it's a dangerous, slippery slope that we're going down.
Christina Uncle did join us last night on the Golazo Network and said that, her feeling is, as our rules analyst here at CBS, that there will be some changes, mostly in regard to handling. But a lot of these fouls, it has, you're right, it's been an emotional week, and it feels like changed the game recently in a lot of ways. And as we've also seen, affected some really crucial results. As we know in the Premier League table right now, there could be some points later on that came down to VAR decisions, rulings.
Charlie said he doesn't want a coach that's too high or too low. I agree with it. I also don't want a ref that believes he's never wrong or she's never wrong, but I also don't want a ref that's afraid to make a call. And that feels like where we are now.
Well, we are solving all of the VAR issues here this morning on Morning Footy.
Crazy.
It's a wild time.
Just let us do it. I mean, clearly we know what we're doing.
Well, I just don't get how there's not a discussion in that VAR room of maybe a player to be like, look at the overall situation, the context.
Right.
Is this a player? I know you don't want to take into history, but is this a player that is
malicious
or frustrated with playing time, with the way the game's going? Can you see that he's on the boiling point?
Second career sending up. But Chuck, the thing
like
is that
seeing those things,
because of the way that the protocol is written out and how VAR hands over a slow motion image to the referee, it's almost like the referee's arm is twisted. And this is why I'm not putting blame on the referee that goes over to the monitor and has to give Rashford the red card because he shows up there with his hand twisted, having to give Rashford
with evidence here.
With evidence. It's like, okay, how do I look at this and say, all right, this is not a red card because of the way that the rules and the protocols put into place, they almost feel obligated.
Yes.
There needs to be a conversation to be had between the football community that makes up IFAB and the referees to discuss how these situations that on the pitch, like you said, the ref saw it, not a red card. The ref is seeing a lot of things, just like we'll talk about it in a couple of segments. Last night, the New England Revolution red card to Mark Anthony Kaye versus Philadelphia. The ref saw it. You told me the Ace saw it.
But New England didn't react the way Manchester United did. They almost became a better team after that.
Well, that's a testament
Talking about
to
galvanizing.
Yeah,